Hannah knew that touching the small, hand-carved bluebird hidden in the hollow of the old oak tree was a risk that could cost her everything. The rough wood felt warm against her trembling fingers, a silent message from the one person she was forbidden to speak to. Her father had warned her Samuel Yoder was trouble, a boy who had tasted the world and lost his way. But as the buggy wheels crunched down the dusty lane and the sun dipped below the cornfields, Hannah couldn't deny the truth rising in her heart. She wasn't just hiding a wooden bird. She was hiding a love that could tear her family apart. The morning mist clung to the rolling hills of Holmes County, Ohio, like a soft woolen blanket, refusing to be shaken off by the rising sun. It was late October, and the air held that crisp, distinct scent of dried cornstalks, damp earth, and the faint, sweet aroma of wood smoke drifting from the chimneys of the farmhouse. Inside the King family kitchen, the rhythm of the day had already begun long before the light touched the horizon. Hannah King, 20 years old, with eyes the color of polished walnuts and a spirit as gentle as a summer breeze, moved efficiently between the cast-iron stove and the large wooden table. The hiss of the gas lamp provided a steady accompaniment to the clinking of spoons and the rhythmic kneading of dough. Today was not just any day. It was market day, and there was also the anticipation of the Sunday service approaching. But for Hannah, there was a different kind of tension in the air. A flutter in her chest that she tried to suppress with extra diligence in her chores. She smoothed her apron, checked the pins in her cap, and breathed in the smell of the sourdough biscuits browning in the oven. Hannah, her mother, Sarah, called softly from the pantry, her voice carrying the weight of years of labor, but the warmth of endless love. Do not forget to pack the extra jar of apple butter for the bishop's wife. She has been feeling poorly. "Ja, ma'am," Hannah replied, her voice soft and melodious. She moved to the shelf, her hand steady, though her mind was miles away, down the gravel road, past the miller's dairy barn, to the small workshop that sat at the edge of the Yoder property. News travels faster than a buggy on a downhill slope in Holmes County, and the news this week had been significant. Samuel Yoder was back. Samuel. The name alone made Hannah's heart perform a strange, stuttering beat. He had been the boy who used to pull her braids in the one-room schoolhouse. The boy who had once carved her a whistle out of a willow branch when she was crying over a scraped knee. But then came Rumspringa, the running around time, and Samuel had run further and harder than most. He had bought a truck. He had worn English clothes. He had been seen in town with a radio. For 2 years, the community had whispered that Samuel Yoder was lost to the world, that the Englisher life had swallowed him whole. Her father, Solomon King, a man of few words and strict adherence to the Ordnung, had forbidden his name to be spoken at their dinner table. But 3 days ago, the truck was gone. The radio was gone. Samuel had been seen walking the 3 miles from the bus station, carrying a duffel bag, wearing plain trousers and a broad, full demeanor. He had come home. Lids. Later that morning, as Hannah helped her father load the buggy for the market, she saw him. The buggy rattled over the bridge, and there, walking along the side of the road with a tool belt slung over his shoulder, was Samuel. He looked different. Taller, certainly, and broader in the shoulders. The boyish softness was gone, replaced by the lean, hard lines of a man who had worked hard and perhaps suffered a little. He stopped as their buggy approached. "Solomon." King snapped the reins, staring straight ahead, his jaw set like granite. He would not acknowledge a boy who was still, in the eyes of the church, under a cloud of suspicion until he made his full confession. But Hannah looked. She couldn't help it. She peered out from the side of the buggy, the black bonnet framing her face. Samuel looked up. His eyes, a striking shade of blue against his tanned skin, locked with hers. He didn't smile, and neither did she. It was a look of recognition, of shared history, and of a sorrow that ran as deep as the creek running beneath the bridge. In that fleeting second, Hannah saw something that the whispers didn't mention. She didn't see a rebel. She saw a man carrying a heavy burden, looking for a place to set it down. And she knew, with a terrifying certainty, that she wanted to help him carry it. The weeks that followed the market day were filled with the busy work of the harvest. The corn needed to be cut and shucked, the pumpkins gathered, and the canning cellar filled with jars of beets, beans, and peaches. The physical labor was a blessing. It kept the hands busy so the mind wouldn't wander. But the mind is a stubborn thing. The young people's singing was held to Sundays later at the Miller farm. It was the social highlight for the youth, a time to gather after the long 3-hour service, to share a meal, and to sing the slow, mournful yet beautiful hymns from the Ausband. Samuel was there. He sat on the back bench, quiet, his hands clasped in his lap. He had not yet officially joined the church, but he was attending instruction classes. The other boys gave him a wide berth, unsure of how to treat the prodigal who had returned. Hannah sat on the opposite side of the barn with the other girls. She kept her eyes on her hymn book, but she was acutely aware of his presence. It was like a magnetic pull, a shift in the air pressure of the room. When the singing ended and the social hour began, Hannah found herself near the refreshment table, pouring lemonade. "It has been a long time, Hannah." The voice was deep, raspy, like rough-hewn oak. She turned, nearly dropping the pitcher. Samuel stood there, holding a tin cup. He wasn't looking at her face, but at her hands, as if he were afraid to meet her gaze directly. Samuel," she whispered, looking around to ensure her father wasn't watching. "It has been 2 years. Does it feel longer?" he asked, finally looking up. The pain in his eyes took her breath away. "Sometimes," she admitted. We heard you were not coming back." "I heard that too," he said, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. "But the world out there, It is loud, Hannah. It is so loud you cannot hear your own thoughts. I missed the quiet. I missed the people." Heat reached into the pocket of his black vest. His movements were slow, deliberate. He pulled out a small object and placed it on the table, hidden behind the large bowl of popcorn. "I am working at the sawmill now," he said quietly. "But I still carve. I remembered you liked the bluebirds." Before she could respond, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd of black coats and suspenders. Hannah's heart hammered against her ribs. She glanced around. No one was looking. She quickly scooped up the object and slipped it into her pocket. Later that night, in the safety of her room, by the light of a single kerosene lamp, she examined it. It was a masterpiece. A tiny bluebird, carved from cedar, its wings spread as if in mid-flight. The detail was exquisite, each feather etched with painstaking care. It was smooth to the touch, sanded to perfection. A forbidden gift. A forbidden gift. To accept a gift from a boy was a sign of courtship. To accept a gift from a boy who was not yet a member of the church, against her father's wishes, was rebellion. But Hannah did not throw it away. She placed it in her cedar chest, wrapped in a handkerchief. Over the next month, The stolen moments became a pattern. They never met alone, that was strictly against the rules. But they found ways. A conversation across the fence while she was hanging laundry and he was repairing the neighbor's siding. A lingering look across the aisle at a wedding. And then, the letters. Samuel began leaving notes in the hollow of the ancient oak tree that stood at the boundary line between their farms. It was a risky game. Hannah would walk out to check the fence line or gather kindling, her heart racing as she approached the tree. "Hannah, I am trying. The bishop is strict, but fair. I want to show everyone I am not the boy who left. I want to be the man who stayed. Do you think a man can change his stripes?" Hannah would write back on scraps of paper, hiding them in the same spot. "Samuel, the stripes do not matter. It is the heart that beats underneath. My father is hard, but he worries for my soul. Be patient. Patience is the fruit of the Spirit." These letters became her lifeline. They spoke of faith, of the beauty of the sunrise, of the struggle to fit back into a box that felt too small, and the hope that one day they could stand together in the light. November turned into December, and the first snows began to dust the fields. The world turned black and white-black buggies against white snow, dark trees against a pale gray sky. The air grew biting and cold. It was a Tuesday afternoon when the fragile bubble of their secret world burst. Hannah was in the barn, helping with the evening milking. The rhythmic sound of milk hitting the metal pail was soothing. She was humming a tune, thinking of the letter she had found that morning, where Samuel had described the intricate dining table he was building. Hannah, Thor's, cracked like a whip through the barn. It was her father. Solomon King stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the winter twilight. In his hand, he held a scrap of paper. Hannah's blood ran cold. She stopped milking, the cow shifting nervously at her sudden stillness. She recognized the paper. It was the note she had written but hadn't yet delivered to the tree. She must have dropped it near the dead. She whispered, standing up, wiping her hands on her apron. Solomon walked forward, his face a mask of disappointment and fury. He did not yell. Solomon King rarely yelled. His quiet anger was far more terrifying. "What is this?" he asked, holding the paper up. "Samuel, the stripes do not matter. You are writing to the Yoder boy." "Did I?" Hannah stammered, tears stinging her eyes. "He is trying. Dead. He is good. Too. He is not of the church." Solomon's voice rose, echoing off the wooden rafters. "He has tasted the world. Hannah. He has seen the movies and the cities. You think he can be satisfied with a plow and a horse now? He will pull you down with him. He will break your heart and he will endanger your soul."
"He is attending instruction," Hannah pleaded. "Wants to be baptized. Because he wants you," Solomon said bluntly. "Not because he wants God. It is a trap, Hannah. I have seen it before." He crumpled the note in his rough, calloused hand. "This stops. Now you will not speak to him. You will not look at him. If I see him near this property, I will go to the bishop. Do you understand what that means?" Hannah nodded, a sob escaping her throat. If the bishop got involved, Samuel could be placed under the ban, shunned completely. Tell me that. He would be cut off from everyone, including his own parents, until he repented. It would drive him away forever. "I understand, Dad," she whispered. "Go to the house," Solomon commanded. "Pray for clarity. Pray for a humble heart. Hannah ran to the house, the cold wind biting her tear-streaked face. That night, she took the wooden bluebird from her cedar chest. She held it tight, pressing the sharp beak into her palm until it hurt. She couldn't write to him. She couldn't warn him. The silence that followed was deafening. The next day, she saw Samuel waiting by the tree from her bedroom window. He waited for 10 minutes, then 20. Finally, he walked away, his head hung low, kicking at the snow. Hannah watched him go, her hand pressed against the cold glass pane. She felt as though a light had been extinguished in her soul. She was being a dutiful daughter, obeying her father as the Bible commanded. But why did obedience feel so much like dying? Winter settled in with a vengeance. The days were short, dark, and bitterly cold. The community turned inward, focusing on indoor chores, quilting bees, and family time. For Hannah, the farmhouse felt like a prison. She went through the motions of her life. She baked the bread, she sewed the quilts, she attended church, but the spark in her eyes was gone. Her mother, Sarah, noticed. "You are thin, Hannah," Sarah said one evening, as they sat by the fire, stitching a wedding ring quilt. "You do not eat." "I am fine, Mum," Hannah said, not looking up from her needle. "Your father loves you," Sarah said gently. "He wants only to protect you." "Is protection supposed to hurt this much?" Hannah asked, her voice trembling. Sarah sighed, setting down her thimble. "Sometimes. The pruning of the vine is painful, but it produces better fruit. Samuel, he has a wildness in him." "Your father fears that wildness. He doesn't know him," Hannah said fiercely. "He only sees the past." Meanwhile, rumors began to circulate again. People said Samuel Yoder looked unhappy. They said he was working late hours at the sawmill, pushing himself to exhaustion. Some whispered that he was thinking of leaving again, that the Amish life was too narrow for him after all. Hearing this broke Hannah's heart. If he left, it would be because he thought she had rejected him. He would think she didn't care. Christmas came and went, a somber affair. Then came January, the month of deep freeze. One Sunday after church, Hannah overheard two men talking near the buggies. "Did you hear about Samuel Yoder?" one asked. "Ja," the other replied. "Bought a bus ticket to Cleveland. Leaves on Wednesday. Says there is nothing for him here." The world spun around Hannah. Wednesday. That was in 2 days. He was giving up. Silence had convinced him that there was no hope, no future for him here. That night, Hannah lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The wind howled outside, rattling the window frames. A blizzard was coming. The weather reports had predicted a whiteout. She wrestled with her conscience. The commandment said, "Honor thy father and thy mother." But was it honoring them to let a soul drift away? Was it right to let a man believe he was unloved when her heart was full of him? She prayed for a sign. "God, show me the way. If I am to let him go, give me peace. If I am to fight, give me courage." The wind howled louder, answering her with a roar. Tuesday morning dawned gray and ominous. The sky was a heavy sheet of lead. By noon, the snow began to fall, thick, heavy flakes that piled up inches by the hour. By evening, the world was a white void. Solomon King was out in the lower pasture. A heifer had broken through a fence and wandered into the ravine. He had gone to retrieve her hours ago. Dinner time came, and Solomon had not returned. "He should be back," Sarah said, pacing the kitchen floor, wringing her hands. "The snow is too deep." Hannah looked out the window. You couldn't see the barn, let alone the pasture. The wind was screaming now, a true blizzard. "I will go check the barn," Hannah said, pulling on her heavy cloak and boots. She fought her way to the barn, the wind nearly knocking her over. The horse was there, but the buggy was gone. Her father had taken the small cart to get to the pasture. She waited another hour. Darkness had fallen completely. Her mother was weeping now. He is lost. He is frozen. Hannah knew she had to act. She couldn't go alone. She wasn't strong enough to pull a man or a heifer out of a ravine in this weather. She needed help. The nearest neighbor was the Millers, but they were old. The Yoders were the next closest. Samuel. It was a violation of her father's command. It was dangerous. But it was life or death. "Mom, keep the fire hot," Hannah said, grabbing the lantern. "I am going for help." "Hannah, you cannot." "I must." Hannah plunged into the storm. The cold was agonizing. It bit through her layers of wool, stinging her skin. She couldn't see the road. She had to trust her memory of the fence line. She stumbled, fell, and got up again. She reached the Yoder house, pounding on the door with frozen fists. The door opened, and Samuel stood there, warm light spilling out behind him. He looked shocked. "Hannah." "Father," she gasped, her teeth chattering. "The lower pasture. He went for the heifer. Hours ago. He isn't back." Samuel didn't ask questions. He didn't hesitate. "Go inside of the fire," he commanded. "Tell my mom to give you blankets." "I'm coming with you," she insisted. "No, it's two, ... He is my father," she cried. Samuel looked at her, seeing the steel in her eyes. He nodded once. Grabbed the rope. They fought the storm together. Samuel moved with a strength and determination Hannah had never seen. He knew the land as well as she did. They reached the ravine, the lantern light barely cutting through the swirling snow. "Solomon." Samuel roared over the wind. A faint cry answered them. They found him at the bottom of the slope. The cart had tipped. Solomon was pinned under the wheel, half buried in snow, the heifer standing shivering nearby. He was conscious but barely. His lips were blue. "Samuel," Solomon rasped, his eyes widening in confusion. "Hold on, Solomon," Samuel grunted. He didn't lecture, didn't gloat. He wedged his shoulder under the cart. With a primal groan of effort, utilizing all the strength of his time at the sawmill, he lifted the heavy wood just enough. "Hannah, pull him." Samuel shouted. Hannah grabbed her father's coat and dragged him free. Samuel dropped the cart and immediately scooped Solomon up into his arms, as if he were a child. "The heifer, ... Solomon mumbled. "I will come back for the heifer," Samuel said firmly. "Right now, we save you." The journey back was a blur of exhaustion and cold. Samuel carried Solomon the entire way, refusing to stop, breaking the path through the snowdrifts for Hannah. When they finally crashed through the door of the King farmhouse, Sarah screamed and rushed forward. They laid Solomon by the fire. He was hypothermic, and his leg was badly bruised, but he was alive. Samuel stepped back, breathing hard, snow melting from his beard. He looked at Hannah. "I will go get the doctor, and the heifer." "Samuel, you cannot go back out," Hannah said. "I gave my word," he said simply. He went back into the night. It was 3 days before Solomon King was well enough to sit up in his chair. The storm had passed, leaving the world glittering and clean. Samuel had returned that night with the doctor and the heifer. He had saved the family's livelihood and the family's head. And then he had walked home asking for nothing. On Saturday morning, there was a knock at the door. It was Samuel. He stood on the porch, his hat in his hand. Hannah opened the door, her heart racing. Behind her, she heard the thump of her father's cane. Solomon hobbled to the door. The two men looked at each other. Silence stretched, heavy, but no longer hostile. "You missed your bus to Cleveland," Solomon said gruffly. Samuel looked down, then up, meeting the older man's gaze. "I did. Some things are more important than Cleveland." Solomon looked at the young man, really looked at him, saw the rough hands of a worker. He saw the humility in his stance. He saw the man who had carried him through a blizzard because it was the right thing to do. A man who risked his life for his neighbor, and his neighbor's cow, ... "Has a good heart," Solomon said slowly, "even if he is a bit wild." Samuel smiled, a genuine, relieved smile. "I am trying to tame the wildness, Solomon." Solomon nodded. He stepped back, opening the door wider. "Min," Sarah has made coffee, and Hannah has baked a shoofly pie. Hannah felt the tears spill onto her cheeks, warm and sweet. Years later, the spring sun is warm on the porch of the small cottage that sits just down the lane from the King farm. Sign hangs near the road. Yoder's custom woodworking. Hannah sits on the swing, a quilt draped over her lap. She watches a toddler waddle across the grass, chasing a yellow butterfly. The screen door opens, and Samuel steps out, wiping sawdust from his hands. He looks at Hannah, his eyes full of that same quiet, intense love that had survived the silence and the storm. He walks over and hands her a small object. It's a new carving, a mother bird and a baby bird, sitting side by side. For the collection, he says softly, kissing her forehead. Hannah smiles, taking his hand. The road had been long, and the winter had been hard. But the harvest was bountiful, and the roots of their love had gone deep, anchored in faith, weathered by storms, and blooming now in the light of a promise kept.